सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The guns had been ordered to stop firing at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November. The last recorded victim, American Sergeant Henry Gunther, shot through the head near the French town of Chaumont-devant-Damvillers, with 1 minute remaining before the First World War ended. Even as that last shot was fired though, new wars were erupting across Europe. Led by the Ukrainian nationalist Dmytro Vitovsky, insurgents unfurled the azure and blue flag of their unknown nation in Polish-ruled Lviv. From the Arctic to Afghanistan, rebellions began to rage. Evicted from the trenches, front lines and the official and regular struggles of militarized powers, Lithuanian politician Michal Romer observed, the war reached into human society and transformed itself into a permanent state of chaos. Facing a great arc of failing nation states, a Pakistan besieged by jihadists hoping to build their own Sharia-governed emirate, a military-run narco state in Myanmar driven by powerful ethnic insurgencies, a Sri Lanka fractured by an unending economic crisis, India needs to consider how it will protect itself from the long and savage wars that could break out when exhausted superpowers finally end their struggle in Ukraine. Their blood drained by the carnage of 1914, Europe's great powers lost the will to confront revolutionaries and warlords fighting over the carrion of the Russian, Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian empires. We cannot act alone as the policemen of the world, British Prime Minister Andrew Bonar Law lamented in 1922. Early in August 1914, as his troops marched into battle, the German monarch Kaiser Wilhelm II had promised them, "You will be home before the leaves have fallen from the trees." Historian Stefan van Evera observed that generals were seduced by what he called the cult of the offensive, brushing aside evidence that rifles, small arms and the machine gun had given defending armies decisive advantages. Future wars, the strategist Jan Bloch had warned way back in 1899, would involve the bankruptcy of nations and the breakup of the whole social organization. But few listened. Even though some strategists understood a war would involve carnage, cult of offense theorists saw the state system as a kind of Darwinian struggle. Great powers must kill or be eaten. The generals who promised President Vladimir Putin likely made the same promises the Kaiser received from his commanders. Leaving aside their experiences of decades-long domestic counterinsurgency, military strategists in India have also designed armies intended to fight short, decisive wars. Remember, the War of 1965 just saw 2 weeks of intense direct combat. Indian troops took just 13 days to reach the gates of Dhaka. Even the disastrous China-India War of 1962 ran for a month and 1 day. And the Kargil War unfolded over only 3 months. Former Army Chief General Dalbir Singh, in an address delivered in 2018, underlined the swift-shot nature of future wars. There has also been growing interest in developing doctrines to fight limited wars like Kargil, in conditions constrained by the need of both adversaries not to involve nuclear weapons. There are other wars India has fought though, which might better resemble the long wars that lie ahead, even though they're little talked about. Think about the disastrous campaign in Sri Lanka against the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam, an emirate carved from Pakistan's northwest, or a military cradle for new northeast insurgencies in Myanmar. These could conceivably escalate to levels needing cross-border intervention that could drag on for years. Few actual conflicts, Lieutenant General Dipendra Hooda, India's former Northern Army commander, has noted, have in fact run to the sharp, quick war idea beloved of Indian commanders. Afghanistan, Iraq, and Vietnam did not famously run to Pentagon plans. Even though Israel triumphed over its Arab rivals in a succession of quick wars, it did so at the cost of creating a demographic crisis that today imperils its own polity. The chances of a successful short and swift war are minimal even when facing a much weaker opponent who'd have presciently observed. Even as quiet descended on the Western Front in 1918, the world remained at war. The armistice was marked by the bombardment of the Allied outpost in Arkhangelsk near the Arctic. That expedition had been intended to crush the Bolshevik Revolution and restore the monarchy in Moscow. "Feel all broke up inside," one British soldier wrote in his diary. "3 killed and 5 wounded, a piece of shell went in my hand and shoulder. There's a horrible sight inside. The whole family, outside of a little girl, lay killed." Following the end of the First World War, though, a successful Bolshevik offensive pushed back Allied lines, and mutiny broke out among French and British troops as well as their White Russian allies. The next summer, the Allies withdrew, leaving the White Army to its fate. None of the Western democratic powers, even those most convinced of the need to unsaddle Bolshevik leadership in Russia, were able to start yet another, conceivably even longer and costlier war in a distant country. The historian Maciej Kolowski observes, "The inheritors of imperial power were eager for war though. The nationalist regime of Józef Pilsudski, the famous Polish marshal, given an independent Poland in 1919, launched into wars of conquest involving Germany, Czechoslovakia, the Baltics and Ukraine. The mortally wounded Austro-Hungarian Empire proved unable to contain Slav national aspirations, and the Ottoman Empire, which had been steadily losing its European territories, was brought to its knees by the loss of over 1 million soldiers in the First World War. Amir Amanullah Khan, at the other end of the world, leveraged the weakening of the British Empire to assert Afghanistan's claims to full independence. Even though his ineptly led forces were slaughtered, with Royal Air Force warplanes and machine guns being used to lethal effect, the war made clear the depth of Afghan resistance. A large number of people hate us with such bitterness that they would welcome even an invasion if they saw a chance of getting rid of us, the imperial civil servant George Roos Keppel warned the Viceroy. The cemetery of Afghan soldiers slain at Spin Boldak became a pilgrimage site, according to military historian Ali Jalali, with folk songs hailing it as the resting place of martyrs blessed by the lights of heaven, he wrote. To imperial war planners, the Third Afghan War demonstrated the coming of a new kind of warfare. The days of lightning frontier campaigns except against insignificant tribes are over, Lieutenant General Skipton Hill Climo recorded. Future wars, he went on, would entail more troops for the defense of communications, will require more transport, and will be more expensive in lives. Even though wars like these could be won, they were extraordinarily costly and yielded only tenuous gains. Britain could no longer afford them, setting the stage for its eventual eviction from its entire empire. In the state of permanent chaos that Michal Romer described, the winners were often picked by the roll of the dice. Revealing the cosmos might indeed have a sense of humor. Late one fine summer morning in 1920, Alexander, king of the Hellenes, was on a walk with his dog Fritz when they were attacked by a domestic Barbary monkey. Within weeks, King Alexander died of blood poisoning. Alexander's father Constantine, who had been forced into exile by the Allies for having sided with his brother-in-law, the German Kaiser, returned to the throne. King Constantine's return incensed France and Italy, providing the cash-strapped powers with a pretext to cut off military and economic aid to Greece. The Turkish general Mustafa Kemal's armies, with support from the Soviet Union, ended up reoccupying the Greek city of Smyrna, scholar Karl LaRue recorded, and eventually Turkey made terms with the West. The victory would be followed by genocides of the city's Armenians and Greek communities, leaving wounds which still fester today. And all this happened because of a monkey bite. Few great wars we should remember as we contemplate the anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine have neat endings. The Ukrainian nationalists who seized Lviv a century ago only got their nation because of the disintegration of the Soviet Union, not their struggle against Pilsudski's Poland. For a century, nations appeared on maps only to disappear again and yet again to surface. Ever since the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the global order has, however imperfectly, resembled a kind of clockwork universe, each part carefully ordered and restrained, designed to balance each other out. This might be proving to be an anomalous period in human history. As the new Cold War rises, other countries can no longer count on superpowers, exhausted by wars like Ukraine and preparing for the prospect of crises from the South China Sea to the Persian Gulf, to help keep the global peace. India's energy resources, trade routes, and security could all be at threat in the not too distant future. The time has come for India to think with great care about the kinds of circumstances it might have to use military power in and how it means to marshal the resources it could need. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint. Thank you for watching Security Code.